Sharon Lusky here from My Crafty Greetings, and we're going to do a Scrappy Tails video today. I'm cutting myself up some dollar store lace. It's 5 inches if you didn't catch that universal hand signal for 5 inches. So I'm just cutting this up. I'm going to be using these dies today, the A7 flower cover plate die set and the garden stand flowers die set. I'm just using the little flowers, but you could also use, if you have this set, those flowers if you don't have the A7 cover plate die set. You can use any flowers you got, but this is just a cool fun card that you can use tulle or netting, any kind of fun funky stuff like this that you have, and just make a cool card for a bride or a little girl or a big girl, whoever might like it. So I just put some ATG on the edge here, and I'm just rumpling it up, just kind of pleating it and sticking it all together. And I've got the 2 pieces to make sure it makes a nice full skirt. Now I'm going to try and wiggle these so that they can overlap each other a tiny bit here. And then what we're going to do is to take some of this poofiness out of it. We're going to actually twist it up, and then I am going to take my ruler here. More than one uses for a ruler, hello. And not just for spanking kids either. At least back in my day, that's what they were used for on occasion. So we've got that all held in place. Now I'm just going to show you, let's say you don't have that tool. If you have some like organza ribbon that's probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick, even if it has the wiring in it, you can go ahead and cut some pieces up. Do not cut it with your good scissors. You will ruin your good scissors if it has wire in it. Don't worry if it has wire in it, because you can just give them a little poke up and pull them completely out, and you are away to the races. And you may actually want to use the wire to just kind of mock sew these pieces together. So I'm just kind of weaving that little piece of wire in and out as though I'm using a needle, because it's sure sharp enough like a needle. I'm going to do a little overlap here too, so that the skirt actually looks like a skirt. And when I add on the 3rd piece, I'll also do an overlap. So I'll set that out so you can see it here. You can see how it's overlapped. So I'm not going to completely tighten this down to a teeny tiny bunch like this. I'm actually going to leave it some more space so it can spread out more, like it's got to cover the waistband of a little tiny skirt, because that's what we're going to be making today. We're going to be making some pretty little dresses. So you can see here how it's got some space on the wire, and we're going to clip those nasty little pokey bits off later. So this is what's happened once this has had like an hour stretched on the ruler. So, and we're just going to tuck the sides in on this one, and we're going to do the same thing. Those wrinkles are actually helpful, the vertical wrinkles, in making it convincing that it's a mini dress. So now what we need to do is we need to put a waistband on this baby. And if you take a piece of paper that is 1.5 inches wide and about 2 inches tall, maybe 1.5, 1 3/4 inches tall. Well, it's just a scrap piece of paper. But I put some ATG on it, and then I'm going to be folding it over. So I'm getting the fold in place first, but I'm gonna take a whole pile of art glitter glue. This stuff never runs out. I'm gonna squeeze a pile of art glitter glue in there, and then I'm gonna put some pressure on this with a binder clip. But I'm gonna make sure I squish in little sides of that skirt there so that it's not sticking out. So now we're going to work on the bodice, and we're going to use this A7 pop-up box die set. I love this thing. So many uses. We're also using the heart lace cover plate die set. The hearts that come out of it are amazing. All the different size hearts are amazing. But this little lacy guy, now if you don't have this die set, you can use a doily or anything lacy that you have. You can even cover the heart with some of those flowers, which would look really pretty. But what I'm doing is just trimming some of the extra stuff off here, because we're going to use our Tombow Mono Multi. I've been practicing saying that. So we're going to put a bunch of little dots on the Tombow Mono Multi, and we're actually going to let it dry. Once it's dried, it's going to behave pretty much like a sticker, and that way you won't have any glue squishing out of that delicate lace work. Nothing to worry about. So here we have some homemade stickles, and I'm just going to coat up this pink heart here so that we can set it aside to dry. Now I just wanted to show you quickly, of course, there's my perfect cutting plates and my cut perfect sheet, which I've cut gabillions of die cuts from. And I just wanted to show you, even though this is a frame, you can use it just to cut a couple strips out of your scrap papers. And I just have set those in, and when I throw them through my machine, of course that's going to be an awkward layout because I do some weird stuff with my machine, but you can kind of figure it out yourself. You can see how easily those die cuts came out, and then you can take exactly the same scraps and go for a second go with these. Now I know that you're going to notice that I'm not fooling anyone. This is not the green that I'm using on those dresses, but I forgot to record me cutting these out this way, and I thought it was a good point. So now once you've got those little strips there, you can go ahead and add some glue onto those cool little vines and get yourself some of these pretty little flowers glued on. And I also didn't show you that cluster of flowers that came with the A7 floral die cover plate, I think it's called. How quickly I forget. Anyways, once you get those flowers cut out, just go ahead and coat up these little vines so that they look like floral lusciousness that we're going to drape down the length of those skirts. And you can make them super flowered or scantily flowered, whatever it is you like. And if you don't have the vines, don't worry. You can go ahead and just glue the flowers directly onto the skirt. So I'm just gauging that to make sure I've got enough flowers, and I do not, because I'm adding one more little flower, and that is from the Garden Stand floral die set, the little tiny flowers. So this is what the cover plate cuts out as a frame. And if you do cut them as frames, you can go ahead and just give them a snip at the corners. Now don't worry if the bends are going in the wrong way. That paper is going to be a narrow enough cut that you can convince it that it needs to go in a different bend than the one that it's doing. And you're going to see 3 cards today. I'm showing you 2 cards today, but this is a very versatile card for any female in your life, or any male that likes party dresses, perhaps. But I've got these colored flowers from a previous project, and I thought that they would look great for this technique as well. And then I'm also putting in the little tiny flowers that we cut at the beginning as well to fill this out and just give it some girly festiveness. So I'm also going to go ahead and add some sparkle pen here. I have a video coming out shortly on how to make your own sparkle pen refill if you choose to do it. So I'm not sure if the manufacturers are going to start hating me. I also have strips of very cheap rhinestones. Of course, when they glue them in a line, it's less expensive for them to make because it's easier for the machine to do it, but you do have to snip them apart, and no worries, once you snip them apart, they will look just fabulous on these little floral vines. And I'm only catching on the big flowers here. Oh, that's a lie, I did the little flowers too. Look at me, Pinocchio. Anyways, back to the bodices of these pretty dresses. You can see here our sticky sticker of lace. We're going to line this up so that it meets evenly on either side of the heart so that it has some good symmetry. And then once we've got that squished down good, we'll put some good pressure on with our thumbs. That's going to stay there permanently now. And we can do the same thing to our little silver guy here. And then once we have that done, we're going to go ahead and trim off the extra. And I'm going to show you 2 different styles of trimming to get different looking bodices from these. So first thing we're going to do with the silver one here is just cut a split down the middle so we can take that extra piece and just fold it out of the way at the little cleft of the heart. Is there a name for that part of the heart? I'm not sure. But we're going to trim off this top portion so that it has a nice bit of a curve, and then we'll flip this over and match up the same shape on the other side. Now if you've made it this far in the video, I sure would love it if you'd give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment, tell me whether I'm good, funny, bad, boring, whatever you think. And if you would even try making a card like this. And if you have not subscribed, I sure would love it if you would. And if you are going to go for a shop at Scrappy Tails, regardless of whether you're buying the products that I've shown today or whether you've been sent a coupon in the email, please come on back and grab my link, and that will let Sabrina know that you came to Scrappy Tails thanks to my crafty genius, goodness. Can I say genius? Okay, so here we go with the other bodice. So we're not going to take out that middle part, but we are going to trim it so that it has a bit of a flow, because this is going to be a girl's party dress, and we maybe don't want it as racy in the cleavage as that other sparkly silver one. Once we flip it over, we're just going to trim along the heart to make sure that we get rid of all the little doodads that are hanging off. And then I'll give you a good view of this on some black paper so that you can see exactly what I've done. Now, what I didn't show you is that I went ahead and blinged these up with some little rhinestones that I had, just adding them into the little natural spots. So here we are with that other skirt. I just wanted to show you quickly how we glued and tacked this one down. Now you can see I twisted that wire nice and tight, and then took off any of the extra because we want that pokey part to be hidden back here in this waistband that we're making. I've added all the glue and we're just clipping all of that nonsense in there. So whether you've used a Scrappy Tails heart or your own heart die, then you want to go ahead and basically trace up what a waist would look like that would connect into that heart-shaped bodice. So you're going to trace a line that suits whatever product that you're using to make the top of the dress. So don't worry if it's got pencil mark on it. We're covering it with this piece of paper here. It's again another little scrap, and then I've got some ribbon that has some glitter on it, and I'm just going to be coating this little scrap up so that it almost has a cummerbund style waist to the dress. And we're going to wrap that around. It'll cover everything up and then seamlessly make this look like an actual dress, not a bunch of fabric and a heart. So what we want to do though is we do want to glue our garlands onto this waistband first, because we want to hide it underneath that cummerbund work. So you can move these around. 4 of them works best for the size of the dress. And you want to kind of manipulate these that you have a stem to be able to glue on the waistband, and that you move them up and down so that the flowers are not kind of bunching up on each other, because that's just going to make this poor little pretend bride or party girl look like she's chunky in the waist. So if you get them so that they're a little staggered, it's going to look a little bit better. So there's a good example of it right there. Try not to glue the flowers right onto the waistband because there will need to be some movement in that area. So now I'm just adding ATG both to the ribbon and to the piece of paper here. I will try and add some dimensions of those papers, but they're entirely approximate because they're scraps, and it's going to depend on how you cut your waistband. You just need to have enough to wrap it around. Now you could use some satin ribbon for the cummerbund waistband. You could use just some pretty paper, whatever you've got and whatever floats your boat, you go for it, girl. Or boy, whoever's crafting. So anyways, I'm trimming off the extra little bits and bobs here, just rearranging my little garlands, and then I'm just gonna eyeball where this heart's gonna fit, and I've got a much too long waist here. So we're just going to trim some off, and then I'm going to put some Tombow Mono Multi. Now this time we're just going to use it as Tombow Mono Multi. It's good for surfaces that are rough. It really has some good grab, so it's a good glue to use for this type of thing. Now it still is too long because I do need to put in a little piece of foam tape. So I'm just gonna sneak a little more out of there, but I'm not cutting so low that I'm going to be exposing the waistband from behind the heart there. Now I've put that piece on, and we can see clearly that it's sticking up past the cleft of the heart, if we're calling it that, the cleavage of the dress. And we need 2 pieces, so I'm going to approximate another piece and then use the little triangle that I cut out to be able to figure out exactly where I need to cut this again. And then I'll peel off the saver paper. What's that paper called? Does anybody know? The saver paper, the paper liner, maybe it's paper liner. And again, here we go with the art glitter glue, and this is the other thing that we're going to need. A7 pop-up die set. Well, you don't need it, but it's just so stinking pretty. So we're going to cut a border out of this, but I also wanted to show you the pop-up book add-on and all their cool pieces. Do you know the girls have used these for wings, like angel wings on characters before? How cool is that? And then I love these ovals and the strip that you can cut. So cool. And all these ovals come apart and make these really fantastic pieces. We were not using this today, but of course I needed to do a little show and tell because I like it. See how nice they are? And you can cut a solid oval to back any of these pieces in any size. So cool. So here's that piece, the decorative piece that I cut out. I already did the Tombow Mono multi trick with all the little dots on the back, let it dry, and that's going to allow me to situate this without making a big mucky gluey mess. And this is going to be able to be manipulated and moved around right up until I give it some pressure to stick it down. And you can see here I've got it pretty lined up now. I have a 5x7 base and then a slightly smaller silver base and then another white piece of paper and that lovely border that we've gotten there. And I just realized that my little dress here needed a little bit of extra glue, so we're going to sneak that in before we start putting this all together. I'm going to set this off to the side to dry because I needed to stamp in my sentiment and I need to heat emboss. And of course, this foolish girl decided to try and heat emboss with a fully assembled card. Talk about doing the risky thing, Sharon. It only wrinkled a little bit and I managed to fix that off screen, but I would say definitely heat emboss your sentiments on your unassembled card pieces, not when you've got your card together. So we're just gluing on the little party dress there. Now you can see it is actually too long for the card, so it's going to need a little bit of a trim job. And also she's naked underneath that clear skirt. So we're just going to put a little piece in there, and then that way if it goes to somebody in my family, I won't have to hear how it's inappropriate. So now that she's well covered up and regained her modesty, we will go ahead and give this little skirt here a trim. So I'm starting with the center panel, and then I'm just going to match up the side panels by pinching them together and giving them a little bit of a trim job. Don't worry if it's not absolutely perfect. Nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to judge, but it's going to work out just great. Now all those little bits that I cut off, I decided to embellish the happy birthday, and I just took one more blue flower and stuck it in there to make this card look extra pretty. You can also take any of those cut off pieces and add them to the inside of your card as embellishment, but I do really think that it helps accentuate that happy birthday sentiment. It's not a great card for a little girl's birthday. I would have loved a card like this. I should give it to myself. My birthday's tomorrow. Oh well, I won't be surprised when I see it since I made it. It wouldn't be the first time though that I've gotten one of my own cards on my birthday. So we've got that all glued down, and I'll give you a good view of how this looks here. One of the things that you can do too is if you want to go ahead and flip those little flower vines back and add a little dot of Tombow Mono multi to kind of a knee-length flower spot. You can stick the flowers down a little bit better when you're sticking it in the card. I tried to get some good shots of this in different lighting. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what we're looking at and how this looks in real life. And of course, pictures don't do this card justice. So we're gonna finish out the next card here. And this is a bridal shower card, and I've got a Shower the Bride stamp that I've just put on some shimmer vellum here. It's called Silver Shimmer Vellum. And I've already got that set in white, what is that, embossing powder. Here I am doing the little tiny dots of Tombow Mono multi. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to adhere it to a piece of paper that is exactly the same color as my background. That way I can pop it up with some tape and nobody's going to be any the wiser, and it's going to allow us a good separation from the creamy whiteness of my embossing powder and the actual whiteness of my embellishment from the book add-on set, or the book set, sorry. And yeah, I don't know why they don't make embossing powder that's whiter than this, or maybe my embossing powder is getting old, I'm not sure. So there we have our little sentiment, and I just fussy cut around. I don't know if they call that a bubble cut, but I cut around it. So I'm going to just stick that up once I can kind of eyeball the orientation with the dress and where it's going to lay out. And of course, does that not look like a wedding dress? I would have worn a dress like that. That's a pretty dress. So I'm sticking that dress down here, making sure that I get it all stuck in. There's the embellishments I put on. And of course, we're going to put a slip underneath this dress as well. You could do that with paper if you want. Now I wanted to put a bridal bouquet here as well. So this is the A7 forest cover plate or tree cover plate die. And I'm just taking a few of the branches and I'm going to glue them together so that there's a cascading effect. I also didn't show you that I coated these with some of that homemade stickles or homemade sparkle glue so that they would look particularly delicious, because I did need to add some wood to my card. I entered this card into Craft Roulette, and I think I'm starting to get the nerve up to be on that show. That Mary's a sharp tack though. Man, she can craft like nobody's business, and she seems to pull cards out of thin air. So I'm not sure if I'm that good. So we're just going to add on the little pieces. Now you can see I've got one flower there, but don't worry about it. We're going to be adding white flowers over top of that. And if you need to overlap a branch on top of that flower, nobody's going to see it. So this is how I assembled the flowers. I took one of the biggest blooms, took one of the smallest blooms, and just twisted it around. Now you could leave it like that, but I'm going to add a teeny tiny bloom, and then I'm going to throw a rhinestone right in the middle. And I added a couple more little tiny blooms, and I'm going to take some of this organza ribbon that I have. Now if you take this skinny ribbon and you cut the angles the same way and you fold them in the center, it gives a neat effect that's not a bow, that will stay flat in the envelope, because we've already got a lot of dimension. We don't need a big chunky bow clogging this all up. Once you've got those assembled in a crisscross, go ahead and add, yes, Tombow Mono. We're going to put that on, put your arrangement on top of it, and that's going to get you all sorted out for being able to stick that down. So now I need to trim this dress, and take your time trimming this, ladies. I did not here. I got cutting, and you're going to see I got it cut sorrowfully short on one side and longer on the other. And I was very upset when I saw this after I cut it, but honestly, who's gonna know? They're gonna maybe think that I was standing crooked when I cut it. They're gonna think it's a bias cut dress. I'm not sure, but hopefully nobody says anything about my card, or at very least, I hope I'm not around to hear it. So I just added a flower onto the bottom there where I had a little bit of greenery that was bare. And I'm gonna go ahead. You could take these extra little pieces, like I said, and throw them on the inside of the card if you like, but I'm going to go ahead and take this gorgeous arrangement. See how that would look good with that dress? I could have dressed brides and made floral arrangements, and here I am making cards instead. Yeah, I wouldn't give up making cards. So I glued that floral arrangement on, and we are good to go. I hope that you've enjoyed what I created today, and maybe it's giving you some ideas for some of the projects that you may have coming up in your craft room. Here's a little peek at my submission for Craft Roulette, and I think it turned out pretty good. It's a much better picture. Anyways, hopefully you get some time in the craft room. Have an awesome day. Thanks so much. Bye.